All right, so now that we got the click here to upload a file done, next we're going to want to actually make the submit button actually perform the action that we want. Now to do that, we're going to go into our backend actions. So let's click backend actions and let's go ahead and click on new action. Let's go ahead and name this file save action. And we're going to add a trigger of endpoint, and that's pretty standard. However, this is where we're going to make some changes that we haven't made previously in other videos. We actually are going to have to change some of these extra options that are over here on the right-hand side. Specifically, we're going to change the request method from get to post. And what that means is get typically means we want to get records from something. So we're trying to pull information. Post means we're trying to push information. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to push this new file that the customer wants to upload into our database. So that's why we changed that request method there to post. Now, because this is a file, we do have to make a little bit of additional changes. Under this request content type here, we're going to change this to multi-part form data. Now that's very important that you have that selected. Otherwise, you'll be clicking submit and nothing happens and you're going to be wondering why. Next, we'll select the authentication profile of basic. And the next thing that we have to do is we're going to create a query variable. And we're going to leave this as type text. And this is going to be file name, file path. Let's call file path. File path. And this way we can pass in whatever they want to name the file. And then we're also going to do something we haven't done before, and that is we're going to use a body variable. And that is located under endpoint variables, but see how this button stands out? It's yellow. That's the button that we're going to click on. So let's left click on the plus there. We're going to change this kind to file, and let's name this file. And that should be about perfect for that. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we're going to actually have to add two events. The first event is going to be to actually create a record in the file database. And then the second is we're going to, once we have that record created, we're going to then insert that attachment into the record. So in order for that attachment to be there, a record has to be created first. So that's what we're going to do here. So let's click on Add Event. We're going to choose the event type of database request, create. Now here we're going to say create the record in the database. Okay. And the model that we're going to select is files. And then we're going to choose a couple fields here to assign a value to. The first one is file name. Now, the file name is going to be that query variable that we put under here called file path. So let's change that to file path. Just create this real quick. Okay, so we'll go down to file name, and we'll set that variable to endpoint file path. And then let's also assign the customer ID, and this is going to be the currently logged in user, so current user, and we'll use their ID. So we can say whoever's logged into our application and uploading a file, that's who we're going to tag here. Let's call this file paths, and that's pretty good there. All right. Now we could also assign the date created. Let's go ahead and do that as well. But first, before we do that, let's save this so we don't lose our work. And let's go up to our front end page, and let's check and see if we have a current date. Okay, we don't. So let's create a new app variable. And we'll call this current date time. and this will be a date time. And we'll choose the option here of now and hit save. There we go. And now let's go back to our backend action and let's assign a field to date created. And then we're going to search for current date, which is not here, of course. So let's go into the triggered by endpoint again, and let's add a query variable where we'll pass in a date time. And this is going to be current date time, current date time. And then what we'll do is whenever we actually create a front end action, we will specify that new variable that we created as the input variable to the backend. Okay, now that will have created the row in our table. Okay, let's create a add event. And this time we're going to choose files, file save. The file that we're going to choose is going to be from our endpoint, and that's going to be the file. If you remember, if you click on triggered endpoint, you can actually see that this was our body variable. This is what we named this body variable. Okay, so that's how we got that. So let's just redo that again. File, file save, and we'll choose endpoint in file. Our file path, let's check that as well. That should be file path on the endpoint. The object here is going to be the event and file path as. We want the whole record. And then we have to choose which property we're going to put the file into, and that one is the attachment, and hit save. And that's it for the backend action. And our next video will show you how to set up the front end so that you can actually call this backend action.